What I want to cover in this video is shorthand notation. So when we were talking about addition in the previous video, we had talked about what we would do if we were repeatedly adding the number 3. We know that we could write that as 5 times 3. Now mathematicians will sometimes write that as 5.3. It's just a different way of writing the multiplication sign. So the dot represents multiplication just like the cross or X would. Now the reason we use the dot is because quickly we're going to start introducing unknown values that we might call something like X. It doesn't have to be X, but that's what we most commonly use. And it would be very confusing if I were to write 5 times X. It would be hard to know what I was trying to do there. So let's just get rid of that. Instead, we would write 5 dot X, or we might leave the dot out entirely. And you should note that when there is nothing in there, when there's no operation listed between the number and the unknown X, it is assumed to be multiplication. Now, there's another thing that we could do repeatedly, and that would be to multiply, and we didn't talk about that in the last video. So if instead of having 3 times 3 or 3 plus 3 multiple times, I wanted to talk about 3 times 3 and do that 5 times, this is where mathematicians introduce the idea of the exponent. You can see that writing 3 out 5 times gets to be a little tedious, and you also have to count the number of 3's that are there. Whereas if I write 3 to the 5th power, it means exactly the same thing, and it's much faster to write, and you don't have to sit there and count the number of 3's, especially if I were to do something more extreme like 3 to the 27th power. If I were to write that out 27 times, it would be very difficult to count. We could do the same thing with X. We could have X times X times X times X times X, and we could write that more compactly as X to the 5th power. That's simply telling me to multiply X repeatedly 5 times by itself. So there's a big difference now between the following. Let me just clear things out. 5 times 3 means to repeatedly add the 3. 3 to the 5th means to repeatedly multiply. Okay, and we could do the same thing with X. 3x is a short way of saying X plus X plus X, whereas X to the 3rd power is a short way of saying X times X times X.